Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. You know, it's interesting. We are right on that tipping point from this year to next year, and it's really just one day in our experience. So nothing really changes from today until tomorrow in the outside world. But you know what can change is the inside world. You see, everything starts on the inside and works its way to the outside. Amanda and I spent some time with a guy by the name of Lou Tice way back years ago. And one of his most famous quotes that sticks in my mind is, every change occurs first on the inside and then works its way to the outside. So there's no sense in trying to force a change on the outside until you change it on the inside. And that's habits and beliefs and all that type of thing. And anybody that's ever had to learn a skill, if you ever learn any kind of skill, could be carpentry, it could be air conditioning, could be plumbing, could be martial arts, whatever it is, you have to do it over and over and over again until you become a master at it. And we are becoming masters of the spiritual path. You like that? Because that's what it takes to experience the type of life that's talked about in the New Testament by Jesus. And in that change that occurs, we literally can make a change in a day. Now, is it easy? No, it takes time. So what I'm talking about today is that affirmation I used from Charles Fillmore. I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm and spring forth. Spring, can you imagine 94? Using those words, and that's how old he was when he did them. So I spring forth with a mighty faith. In other words, I spring forth knowing it's going to work out. So my intention is to trust God that this new year is working. So you see it? With a mighty faith to do those things that ought to be done by me. Is anybody familiar with a list of things that I ought to do?
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like, okay. And it's interesting how we write them down. You know, like New Year's resolutions, everybody writes them down. And then famously we'll say, well, I forgot that one. So it's doing the things I ought to do. And in my opinion, if we're on the spiritual path, what I ought to do is every day be doing a spiritual practice. And basically, spiritual practice, we teach in centering prayer now, which is part of the base of the church, that I take still time, 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening, every day, day after day after day, in silence with God. And I read something. If you want to start with the Bible, interesting, I was reading Edgar Casey's work Friday, I think, and he read through the Bible every calendar year. I mean, he started in Genesis and worked his way all the way through to Revelation. Can you imagine that? You talk about work, and that's what he did. And he's famous today for his, well, I want to say, but his readings that he used to share and help other people. It's really fascinating. Charles Fillmore, we know, spent at least 4, 5, 6 hours a day in meditation. So what does it take, and what do we have to do beyond the spiritual path? And what's interesting about it is, what are the fruits of the Spirit? Or what are the fruits of the spiritual path? And Paul talked about that later in his epistles, and he talked about faith, hope, charity. He talked about abundance. He talked about peace. He talked about calmness. He talked about life working. He talked about harmony. But I got to do these things in order to experience these things. I can remember being accosted by an atheist. It was very interesting. I don't know, this is sort of popping out. But we were at in my earlier years, I was in a more fundamentalist church. And somebody came to church who was badgering us in the outside. And it was, how come I asked for it and I don't receive? But Jesus said, what I asked for in faith. See, in other words, I have to do the work in order for it to work out for me. So I've got some notes. I want to share them with you. And the idea that I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm and spring forth with a mighty faith to do those things that ought to be done with me. And it's kind of like, I really want to write it down on a great big piece of paper and put it up on the mirror. Because I'm convinced the word joy is the key and the secret to the life that works. And the more I look at it, everywhere in the Bible, the word joy is used. It's used in the Old Testament, used in the New Testament. Psalms is full of make a joyful noise. be joy. And joy is a very interesting, let's call it an emotion. And most emotions are learned. It's very, very interesting. Scientists tell us that a newborn baby, there's a couple of fears they have, or emotions, which is fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. But the rest of it we learn. So these things have to be cultivated in our brain, and the synapses and the neural structure has to be created in order for us to experience these other things. And the word joy, stop and think about it. It's not excitement. It isn't. Because excitement can be false. Anybody ever around somebody that's excited all the time and you know it's not true? Okay, so it's a false enthusiasm. And the word enthusiasm literally means from two Greek words, and theos, or God within. So if I really knew God was within, how would I feel? I'd be in joy. I'd be in bliss. And what I have written down here is joy must be cultivated. Joy, I'm going to say it again, joy must be cultivated. It is innate within us, but the world has covered it up with all the trials and tribulations. Anybody remember the trials and tribulations? Okay, and the world keeps pumping that negativity into us. We're great. We've got social media now. We've got TV. It's coming in all kinds of ways. They've even got new apps to get me over here, or whatever it is. And of course, that's one reason, folks, some of you send me messages on Facebook. I don't open them, honestly, because I can't go there. It's not your message, but it's all the other stuff. So please understand that. I do take texts, and you can email me, okay? Because I know it's directly to me. And what it says is, joy or bliss must be cultivated, and it's combined with faith and love. So I'm going to say it again. Joy and bliss must be cultivated. In other words, I have to do it on purpose. I can't just think, oh, it's going to come in. Someday, good Lord willing, quick don't rise, everything's going to work out. That's true if I live in faith. But I have to make that choice mentally in order for these outcomes to occur. Everybody there? And it takes time. It's not automatic. It is something innate within us that we have to cultivate. And how do we cultivate it? 20 minutes a day, prayer and meditation, affirmation, affirmative prayer. Thank you, Father God, for all the wonderful things that are happening in my life. Gratitude, and interacting with others that think the same way as the other ones out there. Okay? Now, it's not being elitist, it's just protecting who we are. If you really, really believed that you had God within you, would you protect it? Yeah. See, and it's learning to protect, it's learning to cultivate who we really are, and affirming that to us. If you take a look at Catherine Ponder's affirmations that we hand out, and take a look at what's there. It's there, I am a child of God. Therefore, I am wealthy. And so it's repetition of these ideas over and over and over again. And it's also connecting directly. I love the metaphor of the cloud in today's computer world, that everything I do on my computer goes into the cloud. And then when I ask for it, it comes back. Same metaphor in a spiritual life. It really is. So, now, I use the term in the meditation, subtle energies. The music that Larry was playing, it's a chord. In other words, he was chording. And did you hear the different notes? In other words, he was going different chords. And it's a subtle energy. It's something you hear, okay? And if you open to it, you can actually feel it in your body. Subtle energies are energies in the universe that we can't measure, that we don't know are there, but we know they're there innately. Now, there are people that pick up subtle energies. Guess what? We all do. We're just not aware of it. Now, there are people that have developed their awareness to the point where they can read it. If you're familiar with the idea of the Akashic records, evidently everything we have ever spoken, everything we have ever thought, is in a recording device out in the ether somewhere. Okay? The Aquarian Gospel is a gospel of Jesus written by Levi, who was able to go back into the Akashic records. That's why I like the book so much. So everything we have ever spoken, everything we have ever thought is stored up there. And we have access to it, and it's pumping it in all the time. So what are we putting up there? I'd just as soon not go back in years. Really. I was talking with Sue earlier, and we discussed our alcoholic days. Okay? And some of you are probably familiar with what I'm talking about. Just to deaden the fears and the upsets and the feeling of inadequacy, we overcome it with drugs and alcohol and all kinds of things. And once I start working on spirit, I don't need those things anymore. Okay? So the idea is, what am I cultivating? What am I putting out in the cloud? What am I working on? What am I consciously putting into my life? And it's everything I think. Okay? So it's kind of fascinating that the idea of love is something that we have to cultivate. Then it goes on, okay, subtle energies, cultivated, it is innate and forever within our life. Okay? Now the problem is we've forgotten it. Again, we're here in this world living the material world, but we are spiritual beings, and that spiritual part of us has been sublimated to the physical part of us. Charles Fillmore, speaking in the 12 powers. We got to go to 12 powers and zeal. Okay? And the word zeal, the more I think about it, the more I work with it, the more I like it. And the word zeal is a fantastic word. Would you agree it's not a normal day-to-day word? Excuse me. You've asked me not to make noise, right? Okay. So, we're going to read from Charles Fillmore. And I'm going to page 130. And it says, zeal and enthusiasm incite to glorious achievement in every aim and ideal that the mind conceives. How do you feel when you're in joy and excited about an idea? Would you agree an idea takes you over and you get excited about it? Okay? And that's spirit, but that doesn't happen until you take the idea in and say, I'm excited, or I'm enthusiastic. So we have to cultivate joy. Yes? Energy. It's an energy, it's an energy, it's an energy. It's an energy promulgated by our thoughts. And it's innate within us, and it's a door that has to open that we open. Everybody there? It's fascinating. Then it goes on and says, zeal is the impulse to go forward. Troward always says, Judge Troward says, spirit is always for growth and expansion. And I use that a lot. Because can you imagine God go backwards? Or feeling sorry? Or, no, God is always for growth and expansion. So if we really believe we're part of that process, everything we do is moving forward, leaving the old behind us. A year ago, Tommy signed a piece of paper that bought that land down there. Okay? It's probably worth more than we paid for it. It's on the books, by the way, for $235,000. So that was a step in faith. And it was done, and we were all excited about it. Now we've been through the desert for a year, yes? And the desert really has been pretty good. Thank you to Terry and Marty for this clubhouse. But it's been consistent, we're stable, and we're holding even. So, it's time to move forward now. We've been here long enough. We're in Pflugerville. We finally changed our major address from a Austin P.O. box to a Pflugerville P.O. box this last week. So we're here. Amen. And we have the design, pretty church. Now all we have to do is get the church design onto the land and we can move forward. And Tommy and Randy and Pat agree now's the time to break ground. Okay, and again, that's a switch in thoughts. That's a joy, that's a zeal, that's a springing forth with a mighty zeal to do that which ought to be done by me. I'm going to read more. So the universal desire for achievement, giving its mighty impulse to all things, is divinely good. See, the word desire is the two French words, désir, of the Father. So we wouldn't want to do that unless we didn't have a thought from God working through us to create something new. Because God is always for growth and expansion. Anybody agree a unity church here in Pflugerville is a good idea?
Yes.
It really is. Okay? We keep growing here. It's like, you know, Matt and I are out looking for houses. Do you have any idea how many new houses are being built here? It's amazing, absolutely amazing. Okay? Now there's more to read. Man is a dynamo of pent-up power, but we need judgment in use. Even love, the greatest thing in the world, is linked in the 12 powers integration of Jesus, and Jesus called these brothers. So the idea is love and faith and all these ideas are all linked into zeal or enthusiasm or joy. Okay, again, the Bible, and I don't know exactly where, but the Bible says, you know, let your joy express itself. Let your joy come together and use it. Okay, so we're talking about becoming zeal or joyful. Okay, now, a lot of people don't know a lot about Cora Fillmore. Cora Fillmore was Charles Fillmore's second wife. Myrtle Fillmore was his first wife, and she is actually the one that founded Unity, in case you have any questions. We even found that out in the LUT training. Is the idea that Myrtle is the heart of Unity. And she's the one that started Silent Unity with her letters. And she died. She was told she had 6 months to live when she first started the whole thing. 35 years later, she died. It's amazing, absolutely amazing.
Doctors are right.
The doctors are right. Yeah, I got a diagnosis a while ago. But the idea here is that Cora, his second wife, who actually was his secretary for a while, who was in Unity for years and worked with Myrtle. And she says there's a law not learned from books. So the ideas that we're speaking about, we don't learn from books, we learn them from within. So she goes on and says, knowledge which is innate in every soul, that when consciously recognized and set into action makes the soul thirst to express itself in its fullness. So it's something, again, that has to be cultivated. We have to work with it. We have to say thank you. We have to praise it. We have to pray about it. We have to give thanks about it. We have to talk about it. That's why we talk about it over. Do you have any idea that every Sunday we say the same thing? And we're always looking for different ways to say it. Because the God is within you, and the joy that you experience is in direct relation to your belief in that expression of God. And God don't make any mistakes. And I use English improperly on purpose because to get through. Now she goes on and says, let's see, the law of divine enthusiasm, spiritual zeal, is one of the most powerful laws operative in the kingdom, turn the page, of the heavens. Do you understand what she just said? She said the law of zeal, the law of divine enthusiasm, spiritual zeal, is one of the most powerful laws operative in the kingdom of heaven. Where's the kingdom of heaven? Within. So, if we're really in spirit, I remember the song from Sunday school. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. And it's, do I get upset? Yeah, once in a while, but I don't stay there. Because the idea is zeal and enthusiasm are what brings me out, and I have to cultivate that if I'm going to be in spirit. Okay? Inspired is another term for it. Okay? And then she goes on. I'm getting really, I love Myrtle. Okay? But again, Cora's coming through with some really good ideas. And she said, although some are overzealous for personal achievement, that's today's world. Okay, in other words, so many people want to get rich tomorrow. There's all kinds of get-rich-quick deals out there. I've tried a lot of them. Be careful. Okay? And they didn't work. The mass of humanity has been listless, inactive, prone to wait for some outer power to stir them into action. See, it's time to stop waiting. Because what we're waiting for is out there, and the key isn't out there. So it's like, it's like waiting. Anybody ever read the play Waiting for Godot? It's just about people hanging in a corner or a place waiting for Godot to show up. And Godot never shows up, so they never get anything done. So we're waiting. Yeah. It's time to step forth with a mighty zeal to do those things that ought to be done by me. Then it goes on and says, some have not realized their deep, spiritually zealous natures. Make a joyful noise is what it says. Which means I'm in joy, happy all the time. And when I'm not, I'm not. But my natural state of being is what? Joy. Innate joy. Then it goes on and says, let us get beneath such limitless inactivity. In other words, let's stop waiting and do something. Okay? So it says, let us stir up the gift of divine courage within us. See, it takes courage. I've been doing a lot of work, interacting with Madeline, and a lot of conversations that I've allowed fear to stop me in many ways in my life. I can tell you 4 or 5 things that I thought were going to change the world, and I got fearful and doubtful and stopped. Now, it didn't look like that. I made up all kinds of excuses. But looking at it realistically, anybody familiar with hindsight? It's easy to look back and say, I should have done that. But it takes courage to step out when there's nothing that I know is true in the physical world. It's like, how in the world are we going to build that church? We're going to build that church. Okay? And that's the idea. And in my life and in our life, where are we lacking in courage to step forward into the future of divinity, knowing that I'm an expression of God, and God is there, we're present, and every time I have an idea, it's a desire God put there for me to bring into accomplishment. Okay? There it goes. Let us stir up the gift of divine courage within us, and we shall find new inspiration, new ideas waiting to be born into the world. Now, what is our purpose? Our purpose is to bring divine ideas from God through us into the world in a new manifestation, to help others move forward. As you can tell, part of my passion is looking at where have I been, where am I going, where are we going? And where we're going is, I don't know where this came from, the New Bethlehem. that just came in. In other words, everybody's looking for the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And that pot of gold is in spirit. It is inspired within us. So when we bring joy in, then the ideas come. See, if I'm waiting for new ideas to come, it's not going to come if I'm not joyful. So, make a joyful noise. Okay, and I've been more and more aware of this, that it's joy that makes things work. Now, I've got a couple more ideas, and I'm still moving. But this whole idea, it's like, even the daily word today, I am grateful for the protection of divine love. And today's world, protection is kind of important, agreed? But if I know I'm handled and I'm taken care of, how would I feel? You are a dynamo of God's expression, divine courage, joy. And imagination is the, in the Advent, I think I've got it over here. Oh, here it is. For those of you that follow the Advent calendar, today is December 31st. Not nice to know. And it says, and this is the 6th day of Christmas in the Advent calendar. And the theme today is imagination. And I'd like to read this. As the new year approaches, I apply the power of my imagination to envision the year I want to experience. All that manifests in the physical world begins in thought. As I contemplate what I am to do and what I want to be in the coming year, I imagine it in detail, laying the foundation for my dreams to continue. So if I have a dream, okay, and I'm excited about it, but that brings the dream into manifestation. If I'm afraid of it, it gets shut down. And I look at that over and over and over again. And the word I've written down is joy. Okay? Because it's the joy that's innate within us that we allow to come out. Okay? And I want to use that scripture. Got to use a scripture at the end. Okay? And this is a scripture that was written in my Bible by my father years ago. Those of you know that my father was a strong fundamentalist. I was raised in a fundamentalist church. But he chose this as a verse for me when I was, I think, just getting married. Okay? And he gave me this Bible, and he has this. This is Romans 8, 38 and 39. For I'm persuaded that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other creation shall be able to separate us from the love of God. Anybody agree that should bring joy? Because here I am, a speck of consciousness floating in the universe, and I've created this body around to live in it and experience the material world. But I'm still spirit, and in that spirit, if I'm joyful, the good things come to me. Okay? Then it goes on and says, shall be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in the Christ our Lord. Amazing promise. Do you understand how many promises are in here? And I often wondered, how come it doesn't work that way? Mainly because I wasn't in spirit, or wasn't working, or wasn't opening, or wasn't making the decision to be in joy and to really believe that I am a child of God. And I must be open. I'm still working on that. And I know that's our path. Our path is to go become one with the Father. Like the prodigal son returning to the Father. And once I start the journey, the Father runs to take care of me. So I and the Father are one. We use that in meditation. So, we got a new year. And the question is, what am I going to dream? What am I going to get excited about? Where are we going? What are we doing? And I believe it, and I acknowledge it, and we're going there. Right down the street down there. And we're also going to find a house right around the corner somewhere. So thank you. I love you. And as a group, see, the more we believe as a group, the more we get where we're going. So thank you. I appreciate Mr. Tommy's job as president of the board, because he's the one that signed the papers a year ago. Blessing.